Hi there folks, back again for another video. This one is going back to Middle-earth because of course it is. The Rings of Power has just finished and it's got me back thinking about stuff in an awesome way for Middle-earth and everything about it. But one of the interesting things that has popped up sort of in my mind at the moment when it comes to playing Middle-earth strategy battle game and playing games with my friends as well has been the idea of pursuing battle companies. So one of the things I talked about in one of my previous videos was how Middle-earth strategy battle game, or let's just call it strategy battle game from now on, is very good at being played at very different levels. So you can play it on a very small warband level with maybe 2 or 3 characters aside. You can play it in narrative campaigns, which is what it was primarily designed for when it first came out. You can play it in reasonably large battles of around 400, 500 points. You can play it in huge battles of hundreds of models per side if you really want to. But the thing that I really liked about the game as a whole is that I am totally obsessed with that sort of narrative element of the game and telling stories with it. And I think the best way to do that is through the Battle Companies rules. So Battle Companies was brought out quite a while ago actually. It existed as far back as some of the earlier editions of Middle-earth with sort of the Blue Book and maybe even before that actually as well. But now Battle Companies has kind of evolved. I think it was all sort of in a White Dwarf magazine and that kind of stuff. But now Battle Companies has evolved into the book that you see now, of which I've taken some screenshots of, that allows you to build up little warbands of characters from both the good and evil side and use them in your games. So what is Battle Companies? So Battle Companies is the idea of playing out campaigns with small amounts of miniatures. The kind of focus is that you start off with maybe a handful of characters per side. It could be a couple of bowmen, a spearman and some soldiers with sword and shield or whatever, depending on the warband you're picking. And you play games against your friends, either following a standard set of scenarios from the book, or by going through a narrative campaign, or doing a map-based campaign, or doing a mixture of all of those. And after each game that you play, you will record your experience for your particular warband. You will gain abilities and skills depending on how your characters performed. Your heroes will upgrade and develop at the same time. And as you go through, your characters will get more character, which is strange enough to say, I suppose, and develop into larger warbands and upgrade and turn from sort of a lowly warrior of Rohan into a mighty lord on the back of a steed, covered in heavy armour, charging forward to smash everything aside on the tabletop. And the whole premise of this is that you will tell interesting stories and build fun narratives around the game, whilst also only having to really deal with a handful of models, which I think is something that is pretty great for this day and age at the moment, especially when a lot of people don't want to spend huge amounts of money on their hobby when everything else is getting expensive. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a walkthrough of what it's all about, and hopefully that's kind of sparked some interest in you for the game. But yeah, so yeah, as I say, one of the nice things about the game is that it's very narratively focused and, you know, is driven by the idea of characters being individuals and building up named elements of your warband with fun ideas and all that kind of thing as well. So you can give them equipment, which is always fun to see, and you can sort of, as you can see by this experience chart, your warriors can upgrade and change and get promoted. And then each of the different heroes that you have can follow these different paths, and they'll roll for certain additional skills and bonuses that you get, which I always think is really nice. I always like that you can go down this route of sort of you have one idea of how a character might work, but it all changes once they suddenly roll the parry skill or the hero slayer skill, and suddenly that character is looking at things in a very different way and approaching, you know, sort of combat and storylines in a different way. You know, maybe that guy suddenly gets courage or something as on the path of the warrior, and suddenly you see them going up against trolls and all sorts of different things, whereas before they were sort of running away from everything, which I think is really nice. But yeah, so here's a little breakdown of some of the kind of warbands that you can pick up. So on each of these different warbands pages, of which there are quite a few for all the different elements in the game, You get a starting battle company. So as you can see here, if you're playing as Minas Tirith, you get 2 warriors of Minas Tirith with shield, 2 warriors of Minas Tirith with spear and shield, and 2 warriors of Minas Tirith with bow. Now, this is pretty awesome because you can essentially buy a pack of the plastic models for the specific force, and in most cases that's pretty much all you're going to need for a really long time if you like the idea of converting and stuff like that. So what you'll do from that point on is you will look at things like advancements and reinforcements and all this kind of stuff, and as things upgrade or change, you can see that a warrior of Minas Tirith with a shield turns into a knight of Minas Tirith with a shield. Warrior of Minas Tirith with spear and shield turns into a citadel guard. A warrior of Minas Tirith with bow turns into a ranger of Gondor. And you can see here that you can get elements of those of that Minas Tirith force through your reinforcements, and also you can do it with the special chart over here as well. And then each of the warbands also has their own specific hero upgrade and stuff, which is really nice to see. So yeah, you can start off very, very small with, as you can see here, 6 models. I mean, even Rohan is just 6 models. This is the one. This is the one that I built actually for use in my games on the tabletop. And I think I tried to pick those exact models. I think no, this one. Sorry, this one is 3, 4, 5, 6. This one's 7. There we go. Yeah. But anyway, so yes, you get a whole bunch of different characters for you to build up and use in your games, and you will start to sort of play games and develop them. And as things go, you'll turn into slightly more experienced warbands and all that kind of thing. What's really nice about the game as well is that with this latest edition of Battle Companies, pardon me, sorry, is that they've really gone in and built up the character of a lot of the different warbands. Like in the older Battle Companies, which is back here. Sorry, you see the back of my head. Oh, God, get it off the shelf. This is very ad hoc. So this is the older version of Battle Companies that they brought out. And this was fairly good as far as I remember. It had some pretty nice stuff in it that is more or less the same. But I don't think it had quite as many warbands in it, or if it did, they weren't as developed as they were previously. I mean, you have, I think there's a few more in the newer one. Yes, there's a few more in the newer one, because this has, for example, this one doesn't have some of the like Wanderers in the Wild and stuff that we're going to see in a second, actually. But you know, decent book, really good, and was definitely something I played in the past. But yeah, and so you can have some special ones like this, so you can play the Rangers of the North. So this one's one which is all based around the idea of heroes. So in this, you don't have any sort of warriors, as it were, and so that means that you just have a bunch of heroes fighting on the tabletop. Does that mean they're all going to be very good? Well, they're heroes, so they have access to you know, might, will, and fate, all that kind of things. But there's not very many of them. They're not going to be able to capture as many objectives on the tabletop and all that kind of thing. So it's a nice little trade-off. But if you wanted to try and do sort of Aragorn, or when in his younger years, you could build up a Ranger of the North warband and play it as such, which I think is really nice. Here's one of these fun little warbands. So as well as doing the very specific ones based around a particular faction or lineage, I guess, you've then got these ones which kind of spread things out a bit and do some fun things. So this one has a hobbit in it. It's got some rangers. It's got some wood elves and dwarves and all that kind of thing. So if you were looking to play something a little bit different, you have these elements too, which I think is really nice. On the evil side, you get more or less the same kind of thing. So you have your sort of your standard warbands for like Mordor and Isengard. I particularly like the Isengard one. This is the one that I'll probably end up making just because I want something that goes up against Rohan in a neat way on the tabletop, which is always nice to see. I really don't want. I quite like that you get the ability to go from scout to warrior, but I would always cross my fingers that I don't have to get a pikeman, because I really don't want a pikeman. I think I don't like the models in skirmish games for someone to be carrying around a pike. It seems really weird, but anyway. So yes, you've got Isengard and all that kind of stuff as well. Then you have one of the fun warbands, so there's the Denizens of Mirkwood, which is really fun, where you get to play as wargs and spiders, which is quirky, I guess. And it literally just turns into more spiders, bat swarms, and all sorts of different things, which I think is really cool. And it means you can do a very different warband on the tabletop, which is always nice to see. But yeah, as I say, one of the things about the warbands is that you get to play out a big bunch of different scenarios. The scenarios are played on 4x4 boards, which is always nice because it means that you don't have to have a large space to play your games in, which is good. And the variety of different scenarios is really awesome. Some of them are, a little bit harder than others. And some of them might be a little bit challenging for starting out warbands and that kind of thing, but they've all been balanced really nicely, I think, and tweaked and changed. And as you can see, you get a basic objective for you to complete, and there's a variety of different ways that you can score victory points and all that kind of different things. And win the game, of course, as well. And yeah, I genuinely think that this is a really fun way for you to dive in and start playing Middle-earth strategy battle game. In addition to sort of like your basic scenarios, you see there here's a snapshot of one of the narrative scenarios that they built up. So this one's all about the journey to the Blue Mountains, and this one follows sort of some interesting ways that you can build up warbands and tell stories with them. So you'd play a series of these kind of regular scenarios, then you'd play one of the larger narrative campaign ones, and then you move on and go through and through like that. What's quite nice about this as well, I think, is that it kind of reinforces the idea of working together as a group to tell interesting stories. So you might start off with sort of basic scenarios, and then as you go through, maybe one of the players whose warband's doing particularly well and becoming really hard to deal with or something on the tabletop, maybe they become the GM of the group and start telling kind of like a story for everyone else. So maybe that becomes a storytelling element, and you build that around a map campaign as well, and you can do some really nice stuff with that when it comes to kind of trying to tell the different stories of Middle-earth. And you essentially build your own little fellowship of miniatures, which I think is always nice to see, because you're not kind of finding yourself going down the route of well, I've got to build to a specific army and I've got to keep it all like this. I like the fact that there's a lot more character and development in the way that you build your warbands, and things go off in random directions that you don't necessarily think would be good but turn out to be really fun and all that kind of stuff. It's the thing that made the likes of Mordheim and stuff really fun back in the day, and to an extent now why people play the games like Warcry and Necromunda and Stargrave and Frostgrave and all that kind of thing. It's because narrative games and warband based games allow you to start off with a very small amount of models and just have a lot of fun with the game. And as I said at the beginning, I think the Middle-earth strategy battle game, in its inception, was very much based around the idea of you telling the story with a very small amount of models. So playing with the Fellowship, as it was back in the day, against hordes of enemies and fighting Balin's Tomb and all that kind of thing. Well, this kind of reinforces that and latches onto that and has you like building up a small force of models and playing out fun, interesting storytelling campaigns on the tabletop. And it also means that you don't spend all your time painting models, because you actually have to take the time to build terrain so that you can play out these encounters and that kind of thing as well. So it kind of reinforces a slightly more holistic approach to the hobby, I think, which is always good. But yeah, so you've got those scenarios and you've got the narrative ones as well. And then one of the things I really like is that at the back of the book, they've actually got example warbands. Now they did this back in the older version of the book as well. Let me just find so for example, can we find, here we go. So they did these back in the day. So there's Nick Bainton's ones and all that kind of thing. They did these back in the day, and these were really fun because I think they kind of reinforced the idea that you could do customization and stuff. So for example, in Nick Bainton's one, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but further on down the page, he's got like wounded Gondorians, and he's done some like kit bashing and converting to them, which I think is really nice. I really like that it builds on the veterancy of the army. It's one of the things that I really enjoyed about playing Mordheim back in the day, was that I could build up an interesting warband and then tinker with them and change them, and you can see it a little bit here. So you can see the way that they've changed weapons on some of the models and developed how they look and all that kind of thing. But so like for example, I cut the leg off a guy who lost his leg, and then I built like a peg leg for him and all that kind of thing. And you could do similar things with this, especially with the old plastic kits, because you can sort of tinker and play around with them fairly nicely, despite the fact that they're all sort of monopose in many ways. But yeah, Battle Companies for me, I think, is definitely one of those routes that I want to explore in more detail. As I say, it's very easy to pick up one of the plastic sets for fairly cheap online from an independent stockist, and essentially you've got the makings of 1 or 2 different warbands from that. As you can see, like reinforcements wise, most of the time you're going to be getting Warriors of Rohan when you roll on this, but then when you level up and you roll a 6, suddenly maybe you're going to get a Rider, for example, or maybe someone's going to upgrade into a Rider, so you then go out and buy that Rider kit and play around with it. And even though this one says, like, you know, on the specials chart, someone turns into a Son of Aeol or a Royal Guard on horse, just get the plastic kit and paint it slightly differently is the way that I would approach this. And then maybe replace it with one of the metal Finecast models later on down the line when you can afford to do so, because you just play around with the plastic kits and have fun with that. And you can do that for pretty much all of them. I mean, the same with Minas Tirith. You know, Citadel Guard with spear and Citadel Guard with a longbow. Cool. Well, just get one of your normal warriors of Minas Tirith and maybe paint them in a different way, or sculpt like a cloak onto their back to make it look like they're a very different character within your warband or something, which I think is really nice. So yeah, it kind of encourages the hobby element of things, as I was saying earlier, with like terrain and all that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, so yes, all of the Middle-earth stuff can actually, if you go over to the Battle Company section of the Games Workshop website, they have a breakdown of some of the stuff you can get. So they've kind of bundled together a bunch of different things, or at least given you the options to pick up stuff fairly easily to build them. So for example, you're going to start in a Goblin Town warband. Well, you're probably only going to need Goblin Warriors, really. So there we go. Same with Candish or the Grim Hammers or the Hunter Orcs, that kind of thing. So they've done a pretty nice job of kind of like bundling things up for you to pick up and dive into, which is always nice. I mean, there's a Warriors of the Last Alliance one as well, which is neat. So you just got some Men of Numenor and some dudes. Pick up for £30 to start a warband for the game. I think it's pretty not too bad. I mean, the book is 30 quid as well, but maybe you could split the cost of that with some friends and dive into the game that way. But once you've learned how to play, as I said during the kind of getting started in Middle-earth strategy battle game video, once you've learned how to play, I think the world is your oyster when it comes to the Middle-earth strategy battle game. And I think especially Battle Companies kind of allows you a lot of freedom with how you then approach developing and building on the game going forward. So yeah, some good stuff out there officially. Obviously, you know, you don't have to pay Games Workshop prices for these. You could probably find a lot of this stuff for much cheaper. 10% off, 25% off. You're going to be getting those down to like £25, something like that, which is always nice to see. And it, saves you a bit of money that you could spend on a character or something if you really wanted to. The other nice thing about Battle Companies actually as well is because it's a small host of models, and you're encouraged to tinker and play around with it. Why not look at that Oathmark range? With Oathmark you're getting a cheaper box set with a lot more miniatures in it, but you're going to try and build a Dwarven warband. Well, pick up the Dwarven light infantry box and just tinker away and play around with it as much as you like, because you can play around with weapon options and all that kind of different thing. Just make sure you match the box to the set. For example, if I was going to do a Rohan one, maybe I'd pick up the Oathmark human infantry box set and use that as the core of it. You've got spears, you've got swords, you've got bows. That's everything the Rohirrim need. Just maybe replace the shields, the square shields, or the rectangular ones anyway, with round ones. And away you go, basically. You can have a lot of fun with that. And, it's not just good. They've also got the evil models as well. So you've got your Goblin Wolf Riders, you've got your Orc Infantry, you've got Goblins, you've got Goblin Slaves coming out as well, which would be good for those people playing Goblin Town and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe pick up one of the little metal boxes to act as your characters, leading the way as captains and stuff in your games. You could always go down that route. So yeah, it's just something to think about actually if you're looking to go down a little bit of a different route with Battle Companies. You don't have to stick to the official miniatures. Obviously you would if you're going to be playing in, official tournaments with Games Workshop and all that kind of thing or whatever. But I think a lot of the time people playing Battle Companies are probably playing it at home with their friends or at a club or something where no one really cares too much about which models you bring to the tabletop. As long as they're all based correctly and they look, like what they are, I think it'll be good fun. So yeah, a couple of options there for you too when it comes to building warbands and stuff. But yeah, Battle Companies. Don't want to make this one too long, because obviously a lot of people who are watching this probably already know about battle companies. But yeah, battle companies, good stuff, really fun rules, really nice way to kind of build up interesting narrative scenarios and warbands in your games, and really gets to the heart of why Middle-earth strategy battle game is as good as it is. And yes, there's stuff. I didn't really show off the stuff for the Hobbit, but there is all the stuff in there for the Hobbit as well. So if you want to go down the route of building like an Iron Hills warband or something, you can do that, which is always nice to see. And that might be a good way to enjoy the Hobbit, actually, just playing with those smaller sets of models, rather than having to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on building up armies using the Forge World lines and all that kind of thing. But yeah, a fun way for you to dive into Middle-earth, and a fun way for you to use different models and convert and hobby and all that kind of thing. If you like the video, if you liked the video, sorry, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and do all that good stuff. Always nice to see people talking in the comments. Have you played battle companies yourself? If so, what kind of battle companies did you play with? Did you play it back in the day? Is it something that you've picked up quite recently? Do you prefer this smaller style of playing games with Middle-earth? Do you prefer the larger games? Which way do you swing? Have you had any problems with battle companies and all that kind of stuff? But let me know down in the comments. It's very early in the morning when I'm recording this, so that's probably why I'm talking utter gibberish. But there we go. That is my rambling way, as it were. Maybe I've been on too much of the pipeweed. I haven't been on the pipeweed, but anyway. So yes, make sure to like, share, subscribe, do all that good YouTubey goodness. As I say, if you like the video and you like what I do, there's always the Ko-fi link down in the comments as well, where you can drop a little bit of a donation to me, which can be used for me to buy cups of tea and paints and models and all sorts of good stuff. It usually goes on me buying new character models and all that kind of thing as well. So yeah, I'll see folks in the next video, where I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Middle-earth, probably. Who would have thought it? And yeah, I'll be back for another video very soon. Bye for now. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.